Ben stepped out of the shiny luxury car, his expensive leather shoes touching the rough red dirt road, making him pause slightly. He took a deep breath, letting the smell of dry grass, kitchen smoke, and the scent of the countryside seep into every cell. It had been nearly 20 years since the day he left his hometown to start a business in the city, pursuing his dream. Now he was 38 years old, the CEO of a large logistics company with tens of millions of dollars in his hands. But standing here, in the middle of the poor countryside, where the corrugated iron roofs still peeked out from behind the bamboo hedges, he seemed to see again the boy from back then running barefoot, laughing heartily in the ripe rice fields. And this return was not for simple nostalgia. This was a decisive trip. A modern warehouse was about to be built in this remote countryside, where the red roads still remained, where his car would rise up like smoke every time it passed. Unlike the previous times, Ben did not assign the survey to his subordinates. He wanted to come by himself, to feel and understand the local people's lifestyle before his company set foot on the first site. The first night staying in the simple rented house, the staff suggested that they go to the market tomorrow morning to buy some food and cook together for fun. Ben nodded in agreement. But the next morning, when everyone was preparing to take their motorbikes, he suddenly raised his hand to signal them to stop. With a decisive voice, he said, "I want to walk." The whole team was surprised. The usually neat boss, always appearing in an expensive suit, now stood there with his sleeves rolled up, his leather shoes neatly stored in the trunk since yesterday, replaced by a pair of simple flip-flops. The red dirt road leading to the rural market meandered through the lush rice fields, the early morning sunlight filtering through the treetops, creating patchy spots of light on the ground. The crowing of roosters mixed with the chirping of children calling to each other. Ben walked slowly, enjoying every step as if he wanted to record every breath of the countryside. The rural market appeared before his eyes, small, simple, with a few rows of rickety tin-roofed stalls, but filled with the sounds of shouting and bargaining. He stopped at a meat stall, bought a few ounces of fresh pork, then leisurely walked on, carrying a plastic bag in his hand, flip-flops covered in red mud, his heart as light as if he had never carried the burden of the marketplace. Turning into a small corner of the market, where a few vendors sat on old tarps spread out on the ground, he came across a girl of about 13 years old, sitting huddled next to a basket of vegetables. The girl was wearing a faded gray shirt, her bare feet covered in dirt. Next to her were bundles of young green spinach, a few purple sweet potatoes, and a basket of bright red chili peppers neatly arranged. Her eyes met Ben's, clear but carrying a bit of the fatigue of an incomplete childhood. When he stopped slightly, the little girl spoke, her voice hoarse like someone who had just been sick for a long time. "Uncle, my grandparents' family grows these vegetables. Please buy me a few bunches." Ben stood still, not because of the invitation, but because of that hoarse voice, an unfamiliar sound, but full of emotion, as if pulling him back to another memory. That moment made him suddenly realize, no matter how successful, no matter how far away, deep in each person's heart, there always exists a place called hometown, where simple things have the most powerful influence. And in the midst of the bustling city, perhaps the most luxurious thing is not material things, but true emotions. Something he had just found again at that early morning country market, through the clear eyes and hoarse voice of a little girl selling vegetables barefoot on the red soil. He was startled, as if a sound from the past had suddenly echoed, stirring up memories that he thought had been buried for a long time. In front of him, the little girl, thin figure, clear eyes, hoarse voice, seemed to carry a piece of her old soul that he could not explain. He did not know if it was because of her eyes or the way she tilted her head each time she answered, but there was something very familiar, very close. "How much is this vegetable a bunch?" Ben asked, crouching down in front of the old tarpaulin, pretending to choose, trying to prolong the time to observe. 10,000 a bunch, the little girl answered, her small hands quickly gathering handfuls of fresh young water spinach. We grow it ourselves, no pesticides, clean vegetables, uncle. That innocent sentence made Ben stunned, as if the whole village with the strong scent of straw and the early morning crowing of roosters rushed into his heart. He nodded, bent down to pick up a bunch of vegetables, admiring each green leaf under the new sunlight. Did you grow it yourself? No, my mother grew it. I just help her sell it. The little girl smiled lightly, her smile innocent, but shining with the tiredness of a child who grew up too soon. He was about to stand up and leave when a small detail caught his eye. A ray of sunlight passed through the old corrugated iron roof of the market, shining directly on the simple silver necklace around the girl's neck. A pale blue stone, worn, dangling like a piece of the forgotten past. His heart tightened. That necklace was exactly like the gift his mother had bought for his younger sister on Tet holiday that year. The little girl was only 15 years old at that time, always wearing it, even on that fateful day, the day the small boat capsized in the middle of the muddy river, taking with it more than 30 lives, including his sister. The body was never found, leaving only the immense pain that his family had carried for more than 20 years. What's your name? Ben's voice trembled slightly, even though he was trying to stay calm. My name is Anne, the girl replied, her eyes still on the pile of vegetables in front of her. That necklace, who gave it to you? Ben pointed at the necklace, his eyes never leaving the green stone, and raised his head. He hesitated for a moment, intending to reach out and touch it, but then stopped. A choking feeling rose in his throat, as if everything was no longer a coincidence. That hoarse voice, the gentle expression on her face, and the way the girl bent down to pick up the vegetables, all of it seemed to recreate the image of her deceased younger sister. My dad went to work in the fields, my mom stayed home. I'll try to sell in the morning, then come back to take care of the housework, Anne answered calmly, not at all like a 13-year-old. Is your school far? Ben asked again, unable to hide his curiosity. It's quite close, Uncle. Just a short walk, the girl replied, bending down to tie up the pile of vegetables. He stood still, staring at Anne's every move. There was something deep inside that made him unable to leave. He picked up 2 more bunches of vegetables, paid, but his hands were still shaking slightly. When Anne bent down to receive the money, Ben heard his younger sister's voice again, as hoarse as ever when she was sick. Memories that seemed to have faded suddenly arose fiercely, like a waterfall sweeping away all reason. Was this a coincidence? Or was fate leading him back to face a secret that had been buried for too long? In the middle of the small rural market with the sounds of simple life, Ben stood there, a successful millionaire, a powerful CEO, with a troubled heart like a child standing crying in the middle of a vast field, calling out the name of his deceased younger sister. And for the first time in many years, he felt something stronger than success, even money. It was hope, a piece of memory resurrected in the form of a little girl named Anne. The little girl had a hoarse voice, and each time she spoke, it was as if a memory from the past was coming back to life. The laughter, the lullabies of the past, the folk songs that her mother used to sing every afternoon in the countryside, all seemed to echo through the way she hummed softly. Ben suddenly felt a lump in his throat. He remembered his older sister, Nu, who used to tease him with her laughter like the dry sun, who used to pull his nose and say, "When you grow up, you will remember my voice for the rest of your life." Back then, they were still young, carefree, not knowing the 2 words, separation. And then the incident happened, sweeping her away with the muddy water of the hometown river, leaving the whole family in lingering pain for more than 20 years. "Thank you," Anne said, handing back the change. Ben was startled, leaving the memory, quickly nodding to receive the money and standing up. He tried to turn away, but his heart felt like it was weighed down with stones. He told himself that he was thinking too much. How many people could have the same voice, the same smile? But after only a few steps, Anne's voice rang out again, hoarse, as if piercing deep into his mind. "Uncle, wait!" He turned around and saw Anne running towards him, holding the bag of meat he had forgotten. He forced a smile and took it, but when their eyes met again, his heart pounded as if a voice from the past was calling. "Uncle, can I meet your mother? I want to thank you for the clean vegetables," Ben asked, trying to keep his voice normal. Anne was slightly surprised, then nodded. "My family is very poor. Don't look down on me." "I also grew up in the countryside. There's nothing to look down on," Ben said softly. He didn't know why he wanted to meet the girl's mother so much. Maybe it was a hunch, or some invisible string pulling him back to a place of memories that had never faded. He followed Anne out of the market, his feet stepping on the red dirt road covered in early dust. The gentle wind blew, the smell of ripe rice, the smell of moist soil, and the distant sound of field birds mixed with the gentle footsteps of the little girl in front of him, like a gentle melody of the homeland. He looked at Anne's bare feet, dark brown, covered in red soil but walking steadily, just like his sister knew in the past. The scenery on both sides of the road seemed to open in slow motion. On the right were vast rice fields, the rice swaying in the wind, green as far as the eye could see, exuding a familiar scent that he had forgotten. On the left were muddy ditches, dry lotus petals silently drifting along the slow flow. He took a deep breath, feeling as if time was rolling back, bringing him back to his childhood, where he and Nu used to wade in the ditches to catch fish, used to sit together and sing peaceful Vongko verses. That hoarse voice, that warmth, that gentleness, all seemed to come alive through Anne's every step, like a whisper from the past, where fate was trying to bring him closer to a truth that had yet to be revealed. He wondered, was fate giving him another chance? An old necklace, a strangely familiar voice, and a country road led him back to a place his heart had never stopped missing. No one knew what was waiting at the end of that road, but Ben knew that if he turned his back again, he might never forgive himself. Under the sunlight shining through the dry coconut leaves on the roadside, Anne suddenly turned around and asked with a curious and doubtful look, "Did you really grow up in the countryside?" Ben chuckled lightly, his eyes sparkling with a distant feeling. "Yes, when I was young, I also sold vegetables at the market like you. But now I rarely go back to the countryside. I live in the city." And opened his eyes wide, his voice eager. "Is the city fun, Uncle?" Ben looked at the girl, then shook his head slightly, his eyes darkened. "It is fun, but it is very busy. Not as gentle as here." He saw in Anne's eyes the innocence he used to have, before urban life swept him away with calculations and the sparkling lights of money and fame. The small dirt road gradually narrowed, leading them to a bamboo bridge over an old canal. The old bamboo trees creaked under Anne's light footsteps. She walked like a cat, soft and confident. Ben cautiously held onto the handrail, each step feeling the trembling of time. "This bridge must have been there for a long time, right?" he asked. "Yes, since I was a child. During the rainy season, the flood reaches all the way to the bridge. It's scary to cross." And answered quickly, his voice calm as if he was used to hardship. Ben nodded, a thought flashing through his mind. If the company built a warehouse here, he would definitely build a more decent bridge for the villagers. But then that thought also disappeared, dissolving into the peaceful morning. Anne pointed forward. "That's my house." In front of Ben was a small house with cracked walls, precariously located in the middle of a muddy red dirt yard. A few banana bushes grew crookedly on the porch, their yellow leaves drooping down. A skinny yellow dog lay curled up under the banana tree, barking a few weak sounds before falling silent. In one corner of the yard was a thorny gourd vine, its misshapen fruit hidden in the leaves. Next to it was a hastily piled pile of dry firewood. Everything was poor and lively, typical of poor Vietnamese countryside. And called out loudly, "Mom, someone is coming to buy vegetables." Then the little girl ran into the yard. From inside the house, a woman stepped out, holding a wet towel in her hand. She was thin, her hair tied behind her neck, wearing a faded "ow ba ba." When she looked up at Bin, he was stunned. Those eyes, deep, kind, reflected the wrinkles of time that he had seen on his older sister Nu. Her voice was hoarse. She asked quickly, "Who is this, my child? Why did you bring a stranger home?" Bin's heart was pounding. He walked closer, trying to stay calm. "It's me. I stopped by the market and saw the fresh vegetables, so I wanted to thank you." He smiled lightly, his eyes never leaving the woman's face. She nodded, her voice natural as if she had known him for a long time. "Yes, come in." She turned away, her steps slow but steady, making Bin unable to take his eyes off her. Her steps were exactly like his older sister's when she carried a bunch of vegetables out to the garden. He entered the simple house. The weak light from the oil lamp on the wall reflected on the old objects, the scratched wooden table, some loose bamboo chairs, the kitchen corner with a long cracked cup shelf. An old man with white hair sat in the corner of the house, holding a palm leaf fan, looking at Bin with a scrutinizing gaze. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. "I am a visitor from far away." Bin bowed his head in greeting. The woman came out with a small tea tray, 2 cups of steaming green tea. "Our family is poor. We only have tea to serve guests," she said, placing the tray on the table with her skinny hands. Bin sat down, his heart heavy. Everything was too similar. From the eyes, the voice, the way he walked, even the way he poured the tea. All the memories of his sister from years ago rushed back like a waterfall, but he still did not dare to confirm anything. Was this a coincidence? Or was God arranging to bring him back to find what he had lost? Under the flickering oil lamp, Bin bowed his head to thank her and then returned the teacup. But his hand trembled slightly when his eyes fell on the necklace around Anne's neck. A thin silver chain with a blue stone, the only thing he believed belonged to his sister in the past. He tried to stay calm, hiding the confusion in his eyes. "That necklace is really beautiful," Bin said, looking at the woman. "You gave it to me?" The woman smiled, nodding slightly. "Yes, I've kept it for a long time. Now that Anne is grown up, I thought it looked nice, so I gave it to her." "Where did you get it from?" Bin asked, trying to keep his voice natural. The woman paused, her eyes slightly confused. She couldn't remember what her father had told her years ago, only knowing that she had kept it as a fragile belief throughout the years of drifting. Han turned to look at An, suddenly feeling her heart ripple. Her eyes stopped at the old man, the one who had taken care of her all this time. She silently asked him if he understood what she was thinking. He nodded. Then his voice was hoarse as if he had come back from a distant memory. "I went to cast my net, saw it clinging to a buoy drifting on the river. People said that the red boat sank that day. No one survived. But it survived. I brought it back and named it Han Bin." Bin's heart felt like it was being squeezed. His mind was spinning. Old memories flooded back. The day the red boat disappeared on the river. The day he lost his sister. Looking at the woman named Han, he saw every familiar feature. The thin face, the high nose bridge, the hoarse voice. Everything seemed to echo from the past, and that necklace was the last ring associated with his sister's image. But if this was really his sister, why didn't she remember anything? Why did she live in such a poor place? "Why don't you go back to your family?" Han asked, noticing Bin's unusually long silence. "It's okay." Bin was startled, forcing a smile. "I just see you as an old acquaintance." "Who is it?" Han raised her head, her eyes wide. "A very important person." Bin replied softly, his eyes silent. He hesitated, not daring to say anything more for fear of breaking something unclear. The conversation was interrupted when a middle-aged man walked in, holding a hoe covered in mud. "Who is this?" he asked, his eyes suspicious. "I'm the one who often buys vegetables from An," Bin replied, standing up to greet him. The man just nodded, saying nothing more. but the look in his eyes made Ben feel uneasy. He asked for permission to leave, determined. He had to go back, had to clarify that necklace, Han's voice, and the story like a mysterious flow on a red river. All of it couldn't be just a coincidence. When Ben left that small house, his shadow stretched out on the red dirt road. He didn't know that this journey would change his life forever. The red dirt road was scorched by the midday sun, and every speck of dust seemed to evaporate underfoot. The faint barking of a dog from Han's yard echoed, breaking the silence and then quickly fading away, giving way to the rustling sound of the wind blowing through the rice fields, carrying the pungent smell of damp soil. An still had the bag of meat and the bundle of water spinach in his hand, but at this moment, they no longer meant anything. His mind was filled with questions, images and memories that seemed to have been buried deep over the years. He walked slowly along the winding road, leading to the rented room where his colleagues were staying. The sound of his slippers hitting the ground seemed to beat a rhythm in his heart. Doubt filled his mind. The woman named Han, with a thin face, gentle eyes, and a hoarse voice. Could she be Ms. New? The silver necklace with a green stone around An's neck, Han said she had been wearing since she was rescued more than 20 years ago, after the horrific shipwreck that everyone believed had taken the life of his sister. But the old father's story suddenly opened up a possibility that had never been thought of, that she had survived, drifted along the water, and was rescued, given a new name. In the chaos of his mind, Ben whispered softly as if talking to himself, or to his sister. "Do you remember that day? I wore that silver necklace? Mom bought it at the Tet market. I liked it so much. I wore it all the time, both when I went to the fields and when I went to the river to fish. If I was still alive, why didn't I come back?" But then I realized the answer was right in my sister's story. I don't remember anymore. I don't remember my family, my hometown. I don't remember myself. He stopped by the bamboo bridge over the small canal, the place where he and Anne had just crossed that morning. His hand lightly gripped the railing. He leaned back, letting the wind carry away his troubled heart like the waves. Lon stood silently on the edge of the bank, her eyes fixed on the murky water flowing silently below. More than 20 years ago, when she was only a 15-year-old boy, he had stood in this very place, screaming his sister's name until his voice was hoarse in despair when the small boat carrying more than 3 people capsized in the raging flood. His mother fainted on the spot while his father screamed his daughter's name in the pouring rain. No one found her body. After many days of searching in vain, the whole family had to accept a painful truth. She was gone forever. But now, the fragmented memories that seemed to have been buried deep inside her began to gradually appear clearly in his mind. Ben continued walking. He returned to the makeshift boarding house with heavy steps, where a few people in the group were staying. Some people stood in the yard, their eyes surprised to see him return late. A young man holding a half-lit cigarette said, "Did you stop by the market to ask the villagers?" Ka put the bag of meat and vegetables on the table, his voice tired. "You guys see what's there then, cook. I'm a bit tired." Someone chuckled. "Oh, you went to the market alone today? That's rare." But Ka just nodded and quietly walked inside. He didn't want to say anything, and he couldn't let anyone know what was swirling deep inside him. I sat huddled on an old plastic chair in the corner of the room, my hands scrolling through my phone, but my mind was blank. I wanted to call my mother, wanted to tell her everything, but I didn't dare. I was afraid that I would give her hope and then hurt her again. I remembered the days when my sister was considered missing. My mother cried until she had no more tears. Every night she burned incense, praying for her to rest in peace. If I told her now that she might still be alive, but it was all a mistake, I don't know if my mother could bear it. Ben stood up, walked out onto the porch, his eyes looking far away at the vast fields in front of him. He knew he couldn't sit still anymore. The clearest clue at the moment was the necklace around Anne's neck, the necklace with the familiar green stone. But that alone was not enough. He needed to ask more. Needed to find out if Han, or maybe Ms. Nu, remembered anything else. Even the old man who had saved her years ago, there must have been something else he hadn't told. Having made up his mind, Bin returned to Anne's house that afternoon, without warning, carrying a bag of fruit he had bought at the market as an excuse to stop by. When he arrived, the sun had already begun to. Leaning to the west, the late afternoon sunlight seemed to gild the entire rice field, creating a strangely peaceful scene. Anne sat in the yard, holding a bamboo basket full of freshly dug sweet potatoes. When he saw the little girl raise her head, her sparkling eyes made his heart soften. "Are you here again? Are you buying vegetables again?" she asked, her voice full of naturalness and familiarity. "No, I just stopped by to visit this time." Key smiled, holding up the fruit bag as a greeting. "I brought some gifts for your family." Anne smiled brightly like the sun, quickly running into the house and calling out loudly, "Mom, he brought vegetables too!" Han stepped out, still wearing the faded aobaba, her hands still hastily wiping with an old towel. Her familiar hoarse voice rang out, "Are you here again?" causing Key to pause for a moment. His heart clenched, emotions surging uncontrollably. On the way back, I stopped by Bin's house to leave some fruit for Han. It didn't matter how much, just be sincere. As soon as I entered, Han nodded and invited me into the house. The old man was still sitting quietly in the corner. His deep eyes seemed to be able to see through people's hearts. Han's husband wasn't home. Bin felt a little embarrassed by the old man's sharp gaze, but he still sat down on a bamboo chair and started the conversation with gentle greetings, praising the quietness of the house in the middle of the countryside. Compared to the noisy city he was used to, this place was like another world, simple and peaceful to the point of breaking my heart. "What do you do for a living?" Han asked when she saw me silent for a moment. "I work in the transportation industry, in the city," I replied, and quickly changed the subject. "Have you lived here for a long time?" "I'm not sure either." Han hesitated. "My foster father said he saved me more than 20 years ago." I nodded slightly, a glimmer of hope rising in my heart. "Don't you remember anything before that? Don't you remember where you were from, or who your family was?" I asked, looking intently at her face. Han shook her head, her eyes slightly sad. "No, I woke up without knowing who I was, without remembering anything. My father named me Han, saying he wanted me to have a peaceful life. I didn't think much about it, just lived like that." "Just living like that is enough," Bin said. His eyes turned to the old man. The man who had been silent since the beginning of the hour now nodded slightly, as if confirming something. "Back then, I saw him floating in the middle of the river, holding a small buoy, his body weak. I brought him home, raised him like my own son. He didn't remember anything. I didn't ask much." "Did you ever drift on the river?" I repeated, my voice suddenly trembling. "Do you remember anything about the color red, or any event before you were swept away by the water?" Han frowned, trying to search for memories in her unconsciousness, then shook her head. "I only dream sometimes about water, that I'm drowning. But every time I wake up, I can't remember anything." Bin was silent, his heart aching. Was that dream a remnant of memories from the flood years ago? The fateful day that swept away a part of her childhood and family? He wanted to ask more, but was afraid of scaring her. He turned to Anne, trying to keep his voice gentle. "When did your mother give you the ring you're wearing?" "Probably when you were my age now," Anne said, raising her hand to stroke the ring. "Mom said to wear it for fun. So you've been wearing it since you were rescued?" Bin continued to ask. Han nodded. "That's right, it's been with me since then. I don't know where it came from, but I thought it was beautiful, so I kept it and gave it to you to wear." Bin nodded, gradually confirming what he had suspected for a long time. Han had no idea what the ring meant. To her, it was just a vague reminder of a lost past. But to Bin, it was the key to unlocking a story that had been buried for more than 20 years. That story could be the missing piece in the tragedy that his family had to carry with them all their lives. He walked in the night, carrying the haunting memories of broken memories, as if trying to piece together a picture of the past that had been swept away by the flood waters. He wanted to bring a souvenir, like an old family photo, but he still didn't have the courage. Before leaving, he thanked Han and the old man with a heavy nod, then walked out of the rustic house, his heart heavy with thoughts. On the steps, the pale moonlight shone down on the distant rice fields, the sound of insects chirping like whispers in the dark night. He had just left Anne's house, but Han's words still echoed in his mind. His heart sang a sad song, reminding him of his hometown in the old days. The silver necklace around Anne's neck and Han's story of drifting down the river made him believe that happiness could sometimes return, like his sister, who had been lost for more than 20 years. But that hope was always accompanied by a vague fear, making it impossible for him to sleep. He sat absent-mindedly on the old plastic chair, holding a cold cup of tea that the staff had left behind, his heart in turmoil. He needed proof, a clear ray of light, something strong enough to awaken his memories. Han, if you are really new, then I still remember the photo taken more than 20 years ago, when I was only 15 years old, standing next to you in a white ao dai, wearing a silver bracelet with a green stone on it. That photo is in a drawer in my apartment in the city. It could be the key to deciphering the truth. I have to go back tomorrow. Bin stood up, walked out into the yard, and looked up at the starry night sky. He pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling as he swiped across the screen, hesitating between calling his mother. He wanted to tell her about Han, about the bracelet, about the vague dreams of the river. He could almost hear his mother's voice trembling with emotion, see her eyes shining with hope after so many years of seeming despair. But then, his hand stopped in midair. No. If Han is not you, Mom will be in so much pain. Memories of the days after his sister went missing flooded back. His mother went crazy, cried until her eyes were dry, burned incense every night before the altar, and whispered her name. Once she squeezed his hand, her voice choked. If she is still alive, I am willing to trade my whole life to see you again. Hope can revive a mother's heart, but it can also kill it if faith is extinguished. I have to do this myself. I can't let Mom hope in the dark. Having made up his mind, he texted the survey team to continue the work without him, then quietly packed his things into a small backpack. He didn't tell anyone the real reason, just said he had urgent business in the city. That night, he lay on the single bed, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. The wind blew through the window, bringing with it a cold breeze, but his heart was burning. He thought of Han's bright smile, her hoarse voice as she hummed a folk song, and that fateful afternoon when she cycled in the rain. If you're still alive, I'll find you, he whispered, his hand tightening. Early the next morning, Bin drove out of the countryside, beginning the 3-hour journey back to the city. The highway was bumpy, red dust covering the windshield. But all the way, his mind kept on thinking of his sister, the little girl clinging to a life jacket in the swirling water, her weak hands trying to hold on to life. He imagined how lost she must have felt, waking up in a strange place, not knowing who she was. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he held them back, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. I'll come find you, Nu, he whispered like a sacred oath. When he arrived in front of the luxury apartment in the heart of the city, the sun had set. Bin walked in without turning on the lights, straight to the bedroom. He opened the old drawer. In the corner of the small room where I still keep family mementos, there are handwritten letters from my father, a wooden comb from my mother, and a photo that is more than 20 years old. I picked up the photo, my hand shaking slightly. The image of Sister Nu was clear even though the paper had turned yellow. She was wearing a white ao dai, a silver bracelet with a blue stone, her arm around my shoulder, her smile as bright as the spring sunshine. I was skinny, wearing a loose shirt, and my parents stood behind me smiling kindly. I gently touched the photo, my heart aching. Oh my God, is that really her? My eyes stung. I sat down on the bed, still holding the photo tightly, my mind spinning. I wanted to bring it to Han to see her reaction, but I was afraid. Afraid she would shake her head. Afraid everything was just my imagination. I tried to calm myself, step by step. I carefully put the photo in my coat pocket and stood up, ready to return to the village. Before leaving, I looked around the apartment where I had built a successful life. But now, everything seemed empty. What I needed was not money or fame, but family. The trip back to the village went faster because I drove with fierce determination. When we arrived, the sun was high in the sky, shining through the banana trees in front of Anne's house, shining down on the small, simple house. Anne was probably at school, but Han sat on the porch, holding a basket of fresh vegetables she had just picked. "Oh, Bin is here!" Her voice was hoarse but familiar. "I thought you would come back." I smiled, moved closer, and whispered, "I brought this for you to see." I took the photo from my pocket and placed it on the bamboo table in front of Han. She looked at the photo with curiosity. Holding it up, she carefully observed each face, a girl wearing a silver bracelet, a boy standing next to it, and a couple standing behind. "Who are those people in the photo?" she asked casually. "Your family back then," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. "Do you recognize this girl?" Han frowned and looked more closely, then shook her head. "She looks familiar, but I can't remember." I felt disappointed, but I didn't want to give up yet. "The bracelet in the photo is exactly like the one." "Is it Anne's?" Han nodded. "Yes, it really is, but I don't know anything about it. My father said it was already on me when he found it, so I just kept it." I fell silent, feeling heavy in my heart. I had hoped the photo would bring back memories for her, but her mind was still like a blank wall. At that moment, an old man with a cane walked out of the house, stopping when he saw the photo. "What is it?" he asked weakly. "It's a family photo," I answered, standing up. "I want to ask you about the time you saved Han. Did she bring anything with her besides the bracelet?" The old man sat down, his eyes looking far away. "I remember he was very weak at that time. His clothes were all torn. Only his ring was left. I think there was also a small handkerchief, embroidered with something, but I couldn't read it. I gave it to Than to keep, thinking it wasn't important." I repeated the old man's words, my heart pounding. "Do you remember what it looked like?" "A small white handkerchief, embroidered with red thread," he replied softly, coughing a few times. I nodded, a glimmer of hope flashing again. I knew I had to find that handkerchief. It could be the last piece of evidence. I left Anne's house, a glimmer of hope sparked by the story of the red embroidered handkerchief. I felt I needed to meet Than, Han's husband, to see if the handkerchief was still there, but I also knew that it wouldn't be easy to approach Than. His cold eyes and wariness from the day before said it all. The next morning, I returned to Anne's house. I brought the photo with me, hoping to convince Than. The sun had just risen, and the morning dew was still on the rice stalks. Anne sat in the yard, tying vegetables to take to the market. She saw me and smiled brightly. "Did you come early to buy vegetables?" "No, I came to see Han's mother and Than's father," I replied softly. "Are they home?" "Yes, Mom is in the house. Dad just came back from the field." Anne nodded and ran in and called out loudly, "Mom, Dad, Bin is here." Han stepped out first, still wearing her old, faded Vietnamese outfit. After turning around, the handle of the hoe she was holding was covered in mud. I walked closer. She greeted me in her familiar voice. Than didn't say anything, just stood there, his eyes still examining me as before. "I want to talk to Han and you," I said, bowing my head slightly. "Yes, come in and sit down," Han nodded, leading me in. In the small house, the old man sat in the corner fanning his hands while Anne was busy with a pile of vegetables. I sat down on a bamboo chair, put the family photo on the table, and looked straight at TUAN. I heard from my uncle. Ms. Han needs help. She had an embroidered handkerchief. Do you still have it? He hesitated, a look of surprise in his eyes, but he quickly regained his composure. I don't remember clearly. Maybe I threw it away. He answered briefly. Are you sure? Bin asked, his voice patient but determined. I think it's important to Han. It might help her remember something. Remember what? He frowned, his voice rising. She's living here. Why are you digging up this, Han? Looking at both of them, her eyes were a little confused. What are you talking about? She asked Bin, and I didn't understand. Bin took a deep breath, deciding to get things straight. He pointed at the photo, saying that he thought I was his sister who had disappeared more than 20 years ago in the red sinking incident. The bracelet was Anne's, and the red embroidered handkerchief. They all belonged to her. I just wanted to confirm the truth. I stood up, my face burning. What are you talking about? Your wife is Han, not someone else. Go home. But Han raised her hand to stop him gently. Wait a minute. Let me see that handkerchief. If you still have it, bring it here. He hesitated, but Han's determined gaze made it impossible for him to refuse. He muttered something and walked out into the backyard, searching through an old wooden chest. A moment later, he returned, holding a small white handkerchief that had turned yellow, with faded red threads. Bin's heart beat fast. That's right, he whispered, his voice choked. Mom made this for you. He handed the handkerchief to Han. Do you remember anything? Han took the handkerchief, her hands trembling as she stroked the faded embroidery. She frowned, her eyes distant, as if trying to recall a memory. I don't remember, she said. She muttered to herself, then stopped, holding her head, her face pale as if hit by a sudden wave of pain. She heard the sound of water and people screaming. Bin rushed forward, grabbing Han's hand. Do you remember anything? Tell me. Han gasped, her eyes tightly shut, feeling as if she were being swept away by a strong current. Someone called her name. Hang on, she thought. When she opened her eyes, she saw Bin, his voice trembling. Who are you? He choked, tears welling up. It's me. I'm your older sister. I'm Bin, your younger brother. He pointed at the photo. This is you. This is me. These are Mom and Dad. Do you really not remember anything? Han looked at the photo, then turned back to look at him. The scarf shifted, and her memories began to return, dim like light through the mist. In her mind, she saw Bin mumbling, his voice trembling and hoarse. I remember a boy standing on the shore, crying my name. She remembered falling, tears streaming down her face. I remember Bin was there, kneeling before Han, holding her tightly and crying. Nhu, you're still alive. I've been looking for you for so many years. Han cried, holding Bin tightly, but there was still confusion in her eyes. I don't remember everything, but I know you're Bin, she said, standing there with a pale face. The old man said nothing, his eyes filled with tears, looking at the scene before him. Anne was still bewildered and asked, Mom, what happened? Who is Bin? Han wiped her tears, answering, He's my uncle. Your brother is Bin. Bin let go of Han, turned to look at TUAN, who understood the truth. Right? He said, looking at the handkerchief. I saw the words on it. She has a family, but she doesn't remember anything. I don't want to lose her. He held the handkerchief tightly without saying another word. Bin nodded, not blaming. He understood that TUAN only wanted to protect Han and keep his family safe. This is his little shrine, but now the truth is clear. He can't let her live in the darkness of the past. Sister, I will take you to see your mother. She has been waiting for you for over 20 years, he said firmly. Han looked at Bin, then at Than, her eyes mixed with joy and pain. I don't know what to do. This is my home, but to be honest, I really want to see my mother. You don't have to choose, Bin replied. I will take your whole family. Than. An, they are all my family. Than was silent, but then nodded as if he had accepted. Fate held him back, crying bitterly as she missed her mother. She thought of the backyard and her mother calling her name. The memories were still hazy, but the pieces began to come back. Bin sat there, looking at her like a sister he thought he had lost forever, and his heart broke. In a mix of joy and pain, he knew that this journey was not over. She seemed to need more time to remember everything, and he had to prepare to take her back to her mother. But now, he no longer felt alone in this search, especially when she seemed to have started to remember a little and sat down again. In that shabby house, her sister and her small family had spent an afternoon filled with joy and pain, making the atmosphere both warm and heavy. Han was still struggling, but still holding on tightly, her eyes shifting from Bin to Than, trying to balance the past that had just back, and now she has lived for more than 20 years. Bin understands that she needs time, but he cannot wait. Han sat next to Bin, her eyes filled with tears, but the light of hope had not yet faded. Don't worry, Mom will understand, Bin comforted, his hands holding hers tightly, gently patting them. Entering the small house in the suburbs where Mom was waiting, both of them felt a flutter in their hearts. Bin could not control his emotions when thinking about this moment. Finally, the cousins were reunited after more than 20 years apart. The trip lasted more than 3 hours, but no one felt tired. Sitting next to Bin, Anne, although still a bit confused, her innocent smile made the atmosphere lighter than ever. When the car stopped in front of the house, Bin looked towards the house where Mom had lived since Dad passed away. His heart beat fast, feeling like time had returned from that distant moment. He got out of the car, calling out loudly, "Mom, I'm home!" The door opened, and Mrs. Hua, her silver hair and gentle face, looked at him with a mixture of doubt and hope. "Bin, you're back? What happened?" Bin tried to keep his voice calm, even though his heart was pounding. "Mom, come in. I have a surprise." Mrs. Hua walked in and sat down on the old wooden chair in the living room, still not understanding what was happening. Bin looked out, turned back to the car. He took a deep breath and reached out to lead An inside. When Mrs. Hua saw An, her eyes widened, her hands shaking. "Who is that girl?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Mom, this is your sister," Bin whispered softly, his eyes brimming with tears. "Your sister is alive! I found her!" Mrs. Hall looked at Bin with utter confusion, unable to believe that her long-lost daughter had returned. "No way, it can't be." She shook her head, her voice filled with disbelief. "Bin, don't joke like that. I can't stand it." Bin knelt down in front of her, taking out a family photo from his pocket. "Look, this is my sister in the photo taken more than 20 years ago. Do you remember?" Mrs. Hall looked at the photo, her hands trembling as she saw the image of her daughter standing next to Bin. She looked back at Anne. Her eyes seemed to scan the hazy past. Bin continued to present evidence. "Look at her. She looks just like you, Mom. Look at this handkerchief. You embroidered it for her. Do you remember?" Mrs. Hoa reached out to touch the faded handkerchief, the handkerchief with the red embroidered letters, now faded. Mrs. Hoa's eyes widened. She exclaimed, "Oh my God, this is the handkerchief you embroidered for her." But still unable to believe it, she looked up at Anne, her voice choked. "Is it really you?" Bin knelt down in front of her, tears falling continuously. "Mom, I miss you. I miss this scarf and the times you called me to eat." Mrs. Hoa stood still, her eyes filled with hope but also with doubt. Bin led Anne towards his mother, gently saying, "Mom, I give you this bracelet. This is the silver bracelet that you bought for my sister during Tet that year, and today it is on the hand of Anne, your niece." Mrs. Hoa looked at the bracelet, her hands trembling slightly, and her heart tightened as she saw the truth clearly before her eyes. At that moment, everything seemed to freeze, and even though she still had some doubts, Mrs. Hoa could not help but admit this reunion was a miracle that she had long awaited. The bracelet, with the sparkling green stone, suddenly all the memories rushed back like a strong stream. Mrs. Hoa hugged Nu tightly, tears falling, chokingly said, "Nu, my child, are you real? I'm not dreaming, right?" She stroked her daughter's hair, looking at her daughter's face marked by time. The handkerchief, the bracelet. "Everything is real, my daughter. I've waited for you for more than 20 years. Nu hugged her mother tightly, crying and saying, "I'm sorry. I don't remember anything. But now I remember." Although the memories had not fully returned, the warm feeling in her mother's arms made Nu feel like she had come home. Bin stood there, tears falling silently, leading the way for the whole family. "This is Mom, this is An Than, Nu's husband, and An, my granddaughter." Mrs. Hoa looked at An, hugging her tightly. Her face seemed to light up. "Oh my God, I have a granddaughter who looks exactly like me when I was little." An smiled, hugged her tightly, then turned to Than. "Thank you for taking care of her. You're like a son to me," Mrs. Hoa said. Than bowed his head, his voice warm. "I just want her to be safe. I didn't know she had a family." That afternoon, the small house was filled with laughter and tears. Mrs. Hoa held the handkerchief and the bracelet, recounting the days after Nu went missing. While Nu sat listening, memories gradually returned. As each piece of memory gradually appeared, the call of mother, the familiar smell of the kitchen fire, and Bin's childhood smile sitting next to Nu. Seeing the family reunited, it felt like a burden had been lifted. A few days later, Bin convinced Than and An to stay in the city. He rented a small, cozy house near his mother's house, perfect for them to start a new life. Gradually, they got used to the urban lifestyle. Bin found a job at his company, and An was excited about the new school, feeling like she could be with her mother every day. Anne's memories gradually became clearer, like the afternoons of running around in the fields and the times her mother scolded her when she got into trouble, and all the times her mother took Bin to the river to fish. Bin never forgot the man who saved her sister. He returned to the village, built him a solid brick house to replace the old corrugated iron house. "Thank you for saving my sister," Bin said, taking the man's hand. "You are Anne's grandfather. You are my family." The man smiled, his eyes shining. "I can't believe I'm alive to see this day." Bin also built concrete roads for the village, built a cement bridge over the ditch, bringing change to the place that helped his sister survive. One afternoon, he stood in front of his mother's house. Nu and the old lady were sitting and talking, laughing under the banyan tree, and I stood there with a hoarse voice, grateful. Without him, I wouldn't have been able to find my mother. She is your Nu. Bin replied, his eyes shining. "As long as you are here with Mom and everyone, I am satisfied." Under the sunset, the small house was filled with happiness of being together and a strong bond that could not be broken.